Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to explore the invisible highways in the sky, and we're looking at exactly how massive commercial aircraft safely cruise past each other at hundreds of miles per hour. I mean, if you've ever looked out a window mid-flight and seen another jet zooming past, and it looks seemingly way too close for comfort, you've actually witnessed a marvel of modern aviation. Just picture it. Two 400,000-pound machines passing within just 1,000 feet of each other at a combined closure rate of well over 1,000 miles per hour. It's absolutely mind-blowing when you really stop to think about it. So, let's dive into this big, pressing question of modern aviation. Keeping in mind that the next time you're cruising along at 35,000 feet, another plane might literally be just a razor-thin margin right above or below you. We really need to understand the systems that make this completely safe. You know, the sky might look totally limitless from the ground, but up there, it's a highly choreographed and heavily regulated dance. All right, let's start with part one, the crowded sky problem. Which naturally leads us into part two. What exactly is RVSM? Okay, so to really get what RVSM is, we kind of have to look back at that crowded sky problem that forced its creation in the first place. Decades ago, airspace was, well, essentially running out of room. Historically, above 29,000 feet, the air becomes incredibly thin. And because traditional altimeters determine altitude by measuring outside air pressure, this thin air meant that older mechanical altimeters became way less accurate the higher up an aircraft flew. To compensate for this inaccuracy, air traffic control mandated a massive 2,000-foot vertical buffer between planes operating above flight level 290. While incredibly safe, this 2,000-foot rule severely limited airspace capacity. It was essentially wasting huge amounts of usable sky and causing these massive global traffic jams on popular flight routes. But eventually, avionics, air data computers, and autopilot systems became sophisticated enough to guarantee hyper-accurate altitude keeping. This allowed aviation authorities worldwide to implement a highly technical solution. RVSM, which stands for Reduced Vertical Separation Minimum, literally cut that required vertical separation in half for aircraft flying in the prime cruising real estate between 29,000 and 41,000 feet. And the immediate benefit of this? It's staggering. Instead of maintaining this massive, empty void of 2,000 feet, safely shrinking the buffer to just 1,000 feet unlocked 6 brand new cruising altitudes for air traffic. We're talking flight levels 300, 320, 340, and so on up to 400. This single regulatory shift, which was rolled out globally in the late 90s and 2000s, was a real game changer. It massively increased the efficiency of flight routes, allowing way more planes to fly at their optimal fuel-burning altitudes. This ultimately saved airlines millions in fuel and significantly reduced delays, all without sacrificing an ounce of safety. However, flying this close together is legally binding and governed by extremely strict global regulations. Airspace where RVSM is applied is considered special qualification airspace, so an aircraft cannot simply wander into it. Operators have to receive specific approval from their state of registry. The aircraft itself has to be certified as RVSM compliant, meaning its physical design and onboard systems guarantee it'll meet incredibly tight performance requirements. Plus, the flight crews must undergo highly targeted training. In fact, pilots even have to put a special letter W on their official flight plan just to let air traffic control know, hey, we are legally equipped and authorized to enter this zone. So, let's look at the hardware in Section 3, the mandatory equipment. We basically rely on this invisible tether of technology to keep planes hyper-precisely locked at their assigned altitudes. You can't just fly manually at 35,000 feet and guarantee you won't drift a few hundred feet up or down. You need serious hardware. To legally operate in RVSM airspace, an aircraft must have a specific, highly specialized suite of redundant equipment up and running before entering. First off, you need at least 2 independent primary altimeters. If one fails or glitches out, you have an immediate backup. Second, you must have an automatic altitude control system, the autopilot, capable of holding the aircraft exactly at the assigned level. Third, an altitude alerting device that flashes or sounds an alarm if the plane drifts even slightly. And finally, an ATC transponder that reports the aircraft's exact altitude back to the ground. If any of these systems fail prior to entering, the pilot must request a new clearance and stay out of RVSM airspace entirely. No exceptions. All this redundancy is required because the margins for error up there are literally microscopic. The total altimetry system error, or ASE, cannot exceed 200 feet or the aircraft becomes a major hazard. This error is the difference between the pressure altitude displayed to the pilot on their screens, and actually scratch that. It's the difference between the pilot's screens and the true free stream pressure altitude outside, which is totally unaffected by the plane pushing through the air. Because this error is entirely invisible to both the pilot and air traffic control radar, the sensors themselves can essentially be tricked by airflow. To counter this, aircraft must participate in ongoing altitude-keeping performance monitoring. They regularly fly over ground-based height measuring units or use specialized GPS to continuously prove their altimeters are telling the absolute truth. Okay, moving right along to Section 4, the human element. Because, let's be real, world-class technology means absolutely nothing without the human element. And this includes the rigorous procedures pilots and mechanics must follow every single day. Just look at how sensitive this equipment truly is. During a pre-flight walk-around, mechanics and pilots pay incredible attention to the static ports on the outside of the aircraft, which measure that crucial outside air pressure. Even a slight dent, a tiny scratch, or just a bad paint job near these external air sensors can disrupt the airflow, corrupt the pressure readings, and cause the altimeter to violate those strict RVSM limits. If the damage is outside the very specific manual limits, that aircraft is entirely disqualified from RVSM operations before the engines even start. And once inside the cockpit, the pilots must execute exact procedural steps. It operates almost like a strict, unyielding checklist. Before takeoff, they have to check their altimeters against a known ground elevation, and the difference cannot exceed 75 feet. Once airborne and cruising in that special airspace, they must cross-check their primary and standby altimeters at least every single hour. A minimum of 2 altimeters must agree within exactly 200 feet. And when air traffic control tells them to climb or descend, they have to ensure they do not overshoot or undershoot that new level by more than 150 feet. It is an environment that demands total, uncompromising precision. But what happens when the unexpected inevitably happens? Let's hit Section 5, when things go wrong. Since we've already established how strict these parameters are, what happens when the pristine conditions of the stratosphere just refuse to cooperate? If a sudden downdraft hits, or severe mountain wave activity rolls through, or a mechanical failure breaks our invisible tether of automation, keeping a 1,000-foot separation is suddenly very, very dangerous. Without a perfectly functioning autopilot, or while physically fighting severe turbulence, a pilot physically cannot guarantee the aircraft won't fluctuate hundreds of feet vertically in a matter of seconds. In these scenarios, there is no time to wait around. Pilots are trained to instantly suspend RVSM operations. They must immediately alert air traffic control using highly specific radio phraseology declaring unable RVSM due equipment or unable RVSM due turbulence. The moment the controller hears this, they treat the aircraft as non-RVSM approved. They will immediately clear the airspace around that aircraft to rebuild that older, safer 2,000-foot vertical buffer or provide appropriate horizontal separation. This ensures that even if the plane is aggressively bouncing around in rough air, it is safely isolated from everyone else. So we've seen how reducing vertical separation from 2,000 feet down to just 1,000 feet completely revolutionized global air travel, driven by strict standards, remarkable avionics, and intensely disciplined human procedures. As we continue to refine our systems with continuous satellite monitoring and even better data collection, this explainer leaves us with a pretty big question. With our skies only getting more crowded, just how closely and how efficiently will we safely share those invisible highways of the sky in the future? Thanks so much for watching, and as always, keep looking up.